The Tigers are back in the top 8, the Dockers are back in the top 4, and remarkably, the Pies are still in the premiership hunt. Hello and welcome to The Round So Far, brought to you by Amy. I'm Rioli Beveridge. This is Kane Cornes. Kane, a massive round 21 to get through. Let's start at the Adelaide Oval with the big story, which was Richmond just absolutely slaughtering Port Adelaide in the third quarter to get out of the line.
Well, they did really. They beat them up. I mean, this was their third quarter burst that we're seeing here, where they kicked 7 goals, 4 plus 24 in disposals, plus 20 in contested. They had 5 more inside 50s in this quarter. And their biggest and best players came to play, even Revolt turning back the clock there with his courageous mark. And he kicked the goal, didn't have a big impact, but playing his role nicely. But Prestia there off to Lynch, he kicked 4 goals. Leon Prestia was massive. He had 23 contested possessions and 10 clearances. And then this man did what this man has done all year. That's a hanger at the top of the goal square. He had 8 shots on goal, which makes it 78 shots for the year. Shea Bolden, I think he's the best player in the competition, and he was the star tonight. Imagine if he could kick straight.
He kicked 39 goals, 39 for the year, as he said. He kicked 4 goals, 5 tonight. He could be a 70, 80 goal a year goal kicker if he does eventually find his kicking.
Well, he's just the hardest matchup in football. Ryan Burton actually played a disciplined role on him. He didn't have the speed to go with him, and he just reads it so quickly and just takes off, and he's unstoppable when he gets in that mode. So if he can straighten up, it's been a freakish year though, and for me, he's the best player in the comp right now.
We'll get to our Saturday star now, thanks to TaylorMade, because when this game was there to be won, Daniel Rioli stepped up. 25 disposals from half-back, but it was his ability to press forward and kick a couple of goals himself which really did the damage.
Been doing this a bit, hasn't he? I mean, he plays it so aggressively, and he like last week I thought he defended really well against Charlie Cameron, and then he can do this. I mean, this is an absolute bomb from sort of 56 metres out on an angle there. So the power, the penetration, just a player absolutely playing at the top of his game. I think he's in the All-Australian conversation. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And his ability to do this and link up and look, young Burgoyne just can't go with him. He tries to go with him, but I'm not sure any player in the game can really go with him. So when he's defending like that and then able to deliver the ball inside 50, that's silver service for Tom Lynch. So he's had an enormous year and gets involved in a lot of scores. And what a year it's been for the half-backs.
Yeah.
Sard and Sinclair and Rioli and others. So
Nick Dacos.
Nick Dacos can be a tough decision, but he's in ripping form.
Certainly would be. Wouldn't want to be in your shoes in a couple of weeks' time. It was such a good night for Richmond. They went back to the top 8, but do they have anything to worry about with Trent Cotchin, their former skipper, who was awesome tonight? But this sling tackle on Ollie Wines, I reckon this probably gets you a week these days.
I think it's a week. I mean, the angle of that is sort of blocked by the player here, but clearly a sling tackle, one arm is pinned. The AFL hate that. Now, fortunately for Trent Cotchin, Ollie Wines went off and got assessed, but came off and came back on and finished the game, I should say, but was rattled for a little bit. So I think he gets a week. It might not be the worst thing, though. We've seen how Geelong have rested Joel Selwood at this time of the year. It will probably actually do him good. He was awesome tonight. Cotchin, big numbers, 32, and just Nan Curvis, I thought, is worthy of a mention as well. Led from the front. He had 29 disposals for a ruckman. He had 42 hit-outs and 8 clearances and 7 inside 50. So their big players and their leaders stood up and just beat up on Port Adelaide tonight, who, it's got to be said, just a bitterly disappointing season. They had no contest forward of the ball. They didn't generate enough inside 50s. And when you are smashed around the footy, which isn't usually Richmond's strengths, you've got some questions to answer, and no doubt they'll have to make a big decision on the coach in the next couple of weeks.
We'll head to Marvel Stadium now, where Fremantle upset the Western Bulldogs to go back into the top 4. We've seen this before from the Dogs. Their backline was just torn to shreds.
Thought it was a great game of footy, actually. I thought it was a finals-like atmosphere where both teams' pressure was pretty good around the footy, but the Dogs just don't defend, and they just haven't wanted to defend all year. I mean, the ease of which some of these marks were taken inside 50, there's a small forward bobbing up. Look at this. Lob just they had to kick the ball to him because no one wanted to go near him, and time after time, Fremantle were able to transition the ball slowly but methodically and get the better of the Western Bulldogs inside 50. Treloar's gone down there, non-competitive in that marking contest, and Fremantle, once they did change the angles on the ball and be a bit braver, then the Dogs had no answers. So that's been their issue for them all year. And it's a big story from grand final last year, leading at half-time to potentially missing the finals. They've been a big disappointment this year.
They took 18 marks inside 50, the Dockers. You mentioned they moved it methodically. They took a few more risks, though. The last couple of weeks, they've kicked 12 goals in their last 2 games. They kicked 14 goals tonight. This is an example of just how they were able to move the ball slowly, but be a bit more bolder with their ball
Yeah,
use.
so last week they were shut down. They had a lot of this, but only 40 inside 50s, and they weren't prepared to, once you see the option, then go. Whereas tonight, yep, they're changing the angles, but they were in complete control. Now, Justin Longmuir said at halftime, this wasn't the plan, but essentially they just took what the Western Bulldogs gave them. So their efficiency going inside 50, they had the 50 entries for 25 shots, I think it was. So the ability to do that, shift the Dogs' defence, and then get a matchup that you like inside 50 stood out tonight. So terrific ball use, and Rory Lobb got it on the end of 4, and Frederick kicked 3.
They just dominated on the stats sheet all night, did the Dogs. They had 27 more disposals, as we can see there, but it was the uncontested footy. 46 more uncontested possessions,
Look at the marks.
49 more uncontested
Yeah,
marks.
look at plus 50 in marks, and you mentioned the 18 marks inside 50, so plus 9, and the Bulldogs had 3 tall targets. Hugo Hagan, Norton was down there, and Josh Bruce looked a little bit better tonight. I know we've just discussed his form recently on this show, but they had the targets there. Tabin actually went off. He was injured. He's done a soft tissue injury, so Fremantle was still able to capitalise, and it didn't matter who was down there. The Dogs just didn't put enough physical contact on Fremantle's forwards, and that was the result of the game.
There was one good news story for the Western Bulldogs. Sam Darcy making his debut. He looks awesome across half-back. 10 disposals, 8 marks, 7 intercepts.
Well, he could be anything, couldn't he? I mean, you mentioned the 7 intercepts. 4 of them were taken in a contested marking situation. I'm trying to think of, when you see a young player, who does he remind you of? I'm not sure. Maybe it is Sam DeConey. There's a bit of him about that.
Rioli?
Yeah, perhaps, but he's unique, and once he gets the confidence and once he gets a few more pre-seasons, I do like him, behind the ball, to have that weapon, that interceptor that everyone would like. But yeah, I was really impressed by his debut today.
We'll head to GMHBA Stadium now, where Geelong, they were without some of their biggest names, but once again, they turned it on in the third quarter, 4-0 to ease away from St Kilda.
We spoke about this last week, didn't we, where they just went bang in the third quarter, kicked 8 goals to the Western Bulldogs 0 in that third quarter, and this was the case again. And once again, the big story was the players that weren't there, which we'll get to in a moment, but they're just such an even side. It doesn't really matter who is there, and they're just impossible to play on this ground. They defend the ground so well, really difficult to score again. There's Isaac Smith, he kicked 3 goals, thought his work rate and his leadership tonight was extraordinary. Tom Hawkins kicks 3, but once again, there wasn't really any full standout performers tonight, and that's been the story of their year. So outstanding season to date. They're playing a different way. There's no doubt they're prepared to take more risks with the footy. And they don't matter. It doesn't matter who's there. Dowhouse comes into the side, or whoever it is. They play their role and they play it really well. 11
straight wins now for the Cats. One minor concern pre-game. They had 3 late changes. Paddy Dangerfield, we see him here doing a late warm-up. Had a bit of calf tightness. The club's saying it's only precautionary though.
Can't be too bad. Yeah, if you're running at that sort of speed pre-game, you don't have a torn calf. So there's just a bit of tightness, a bit of caution there. We know that he missed the 6 weeks throughout the year and was, put through that mini pre-season. I just think it's wise coaching.
Yeah.
You could have easily rushed Selwood back into the side. They didn't do that. They've given him a week off, and they've managed the squad so well all year to have them absolutely cherry ripe in 3 and 4 weeks' time, not now. And the result of the match said that was a very wise call to make pre-game.
Mark Blitzarves, another one that was managed. Another injury concern for St Kilda, again involving Dan Hanbury, just his 2nd game for the year, just his 17th game in the last 4 seasons since crossing to St Kilda. Subbed out at 3/4 time with an ankle problem.
Yeah, so you just saw him motion there, he rolled the ankle in, and unfortunately we've spoken so much about Dan Hanbury. I thought he was pretty good on his first game back last week, but just never ever gets a good run at it, and you mentioned the 17 games, so has been unreliable. They'll have to make a call on him at the end of the year, clearly.
We'll get to Friday night footy at the MCG, where another remarkable Collingwood win. 11 straight they've won now. This one again by just 7 points. This final quarter had a bit of everything, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Look, it was blow for blow, wasn't it? Ben Brown, I thought he was good, so he answers the Ash Johnson goal here, and what a beautiful kick that was. But then it was just basically goal for goal in one of the best games we've seen all year. Dacos just goes bang from his brother there. Those two just don't miss. Two of the most skillful players in the game. Neil Bullen out of the centre bounce. Awesome finish, and you thought, here we go. There's no way Collingwood can hang on for another one. Surely they are due. Petty gives away a sloppy free kick there, and this young man doesn't miss, and that puts Collingwood back in front. They're good enough to hang on in front of a massive crowd on Friday night in a finals-like game. I'm still not convinced on them, Rioli. I'm not convinced. I just don't think that this can continue.
What more do they have to do?
Well, I'm just not sure about their forward structure. Look, I don't want to diminish what they've done this year because they've been the most watchable side. It's been the story of the year, but can you rely on Elliott and Johnson and Ginnivan in a big prelim final and Cox at the MCG and Mycheck? So that's my concern. It would be an unheralded forward line if they were to win the premiership with the mix that they've got down there. Having said that, De Goey I thought was terrific and the last fortnight has come straight back in. Some of his one-on-one contest work around the ball and stoppages in the last quarter gives them a different element. So, look, I'm thrilled for them. I'm just not convinced that this run will continue to prelim final weekend.
And Craig McRae saying after the game, the most definitive he's been yet, saying he wants Jordan De Goey to stay at the club, of course, a free agent. Now, Ed Langdon made some headlines pre-game, said that Collingwood was all duck, no dinner. He said they could only play one way, a bit of a one-trick pony. After saying that, you wouldn't want to meet Braden Maynard in the first 10 seconds.
Look at that, 20 seconds into the game. See, I reckon the game's too nice. I've spoken about this before. Everyone talks to each other, shake hands before the game. You know, everyone's mates with each other. No one tags each other anymore. And he just goes bang. Clearly, they assessed what was said. Clearly, they didn't like it, and they didn't shy away from that. They didn't say, oh, no, we didn't hear it. We don't read the newspapers, which would be the party line. They embraced it, and they responded. That's the sign of a really good, tough, competitive side. And I reckon he's my favourite player, Braden Maynard. He had another huge tackle later on in the game as well, which is probably the tackle of the year.
If anything, Collingwood showed they weren't a one-trick pony because he said if they're playing fast footy on their terms, then they're hard to stop. But Collingwood actually played this slow, methodical style where they switched the ball a number of times throughout the game.
Yeah, so let's have a look at this. They weren't a one-trick. So this is when they look their most dangerous. Yeah. When you're kicking it down the line to Lever and May and Petty and Hibbert and whoever else, Scorn that's back there, you're in trouble. So they were prepared to do this. Now, make no mistake, they were smashed in the first half. So it was 41-18 inside 50s in the first half, scoring shots 17-10. So the resilience of this Collingwood group to absorb all of that and to hang in there and then change it up and go a different way. Look, Sidebottom, when he gets the footy in his hands, just makes good decisions. They've got cool heads behind the ball. I mean, Noble is a composed player. The Dacos boys, when they're back there with the footy, they're composed. And the big switch here leads to a goal. Jeremy Howe, once again, experienced, played a lot of footy, knows what he's doing. You isolate, you get the 2-on-2 inside 50, which Melbourne don't often give you, and that results in a goal. So the transition of play and their efficiency going inside forward 50 was what stood out. They had 21 scores from just 41 entries. The
Demons, how worried are you about them? They've only won 4 of their last 10 now after going on that big winning streak to start the season.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's the 5th time this year they've led by 20 points in a game and lost. So there's some concerns there. They had a lot of the footy. That was the other thing that stood out to me. So 201 kicks, 208 handballs. They did not cope with Collingwood's pressure. It was like, pressure's coming, I'm going to handball it to my teammate, it's his problem now. Yeah. And Collingwood, the amount of holding the balls that they pinged Melbourne with stood out to me. So they weren't able to absorb the pressure. And they've got issues in this inside their forward 50. Yeah. I mean, who was going to stand up for them in the second half? It didn't really appear to be anyone if it wasn't Bailey Fritsch. So, yeah, there's some concerns there. I still think they'll be around the mark. Are they good enough to win it? Not sure, but I think they'll have a fair say in this season still.
Desperately missing Tom McDonald. We'll head to the ladder now. It's pretty fun reading if you're a Collingwood fan. They are second on the table. Looking good for a top 4 spot as well.
Yeah, and Richmond, which we've spoken about. Carlton just need one more, and St Kilda, it's going to be really difficult for them. So you would think that the top 8 is set, albeit you think the Dogs have still got a chance with their draw.
Yeah, they've got a pretty easy run home. GWS and Hawthorn in their last 2. If they can win that, Carlton plays 3 top 4 sides in their last 3 games. They're still an outside chance, but they'll need to be better than what they were today. We'll head to Giants Stadium now, where GWS thrashed Essendon. How's this? Mark Mcavoy said they checked out last week. Their pressure was enormous in this game.
Well, he was loyal at selection, didn't make the selection statement that I thought he was going to make, and then they brought this. So where's this been all year? I mean, the last 4 weeks, as we'd spoken about, that averaged 45 points. This was a ferocious display, sort of 2016, 2017 Giants. This was what they were known for. They had a nasty edge about them. I thought the pressure on the football today, I mean, they smashed Essendon in every metric, plus 16 inside 50s, and the tackles inside 50s, 16-1.
Yeah.
16-1. So, I mean, that was the response that they needed, but with all due respect, far too little too late.
The Bombers had won 4 of their last 5 going into this. What's the most glaring thing they need to address in the off-season? And then what are their expectations going into the summer? Because they keep letting down their supporters, don't they?
I don't know. They're going to have to win a final at some point. So you would hope that their expectations are to do that at the start of the year. I don't know. I've just written down a couple of notes. They're too nice. they don't defend, and they've got issues with their forward line. So that would be the three things to me. If they can embrace the defensive aspects of the game and their midfielders aren't worried about getting 30, it's more about limiting the opposition, then that would be a start. But they need to get to work on what defensive mechanism they want to go with and how to get the players to buy in, because, as I said, to give up 90-odd points to that Giant side today is pretty ordinary.
We'll head to our Amy clangers now, and we will start at Giant Stadium. How's this from Sam Draper, who's been in some pretty good form? This is one of the best goal assists you'll see all year, simply because of the fact that I don't think he meant to slip over there.
No, I don't think he did. Let's have another look at that, and he falls over, and Guelphy is a beneficiary of that. That one just missed by a long... And he doesn't miss. Going to
cost him as well. And how's this in Tassie today? The coin before the game gets stuck in the turf. Toot Miller's laughing there. He doesn't know what's going on. And they have to readdress
never seen that before,
coin
ever.
toss. We will stay in Tasmania now. It was another Jack Gunston show as Hawthorn beat Gold Coast once and for all, ending the Suns season. He was awesome, Jack Gunston. 5 goals and a goal assist.
Where's he play next year? That's what I want to know. I'm hearing he's going to Brisbane, and we'll have a chat about that in a moment. But, I mean, what a player he has been. He's unique in the fact that he's been so versatile, but against a very good opponent in Collins today. I mean, he absolutely was the match winner on the ground, not for the first time this year. So he's leading strongly. He's got his power back. He's always been a beautiful finisher. And what a player he's been for such a long period of time. Out of contract, of course, when you get to that age of 30, it is an interesting decision for him to make. Is there another premiership in him? Is that what motivates him? Or does he want to stick around with this pretty promising, it's got to be said, young Hawthorn side that have surprised me this year with some of their results?
Do they still rely a bit too much on their older players? I mean, Luke Bruce's leading their goal kicking this year. Gunston kicked another 5. Mcavoy's still their captain.
So if Bruce and Gunston go, who kicks their goals?
Yeah.
So Wingard is a goal kicker, but you can't rely on his body. He gets injured far too often. Moore's kicked 24 for the year, but I like him more up the ground. He was terrific in the midfield today.
Mitch Lewis has had a good
Mitch
year.
Lewis has been good, but once again, is Mitch Lewis going to kick you 50 or 60 next year, which you need? Possibly. There's no doubt about that. But if Gunston and Bruce leave, I think it leaves them a little bit short forward of the ball, and you'd love to see them hang around and mentor some of these young players.
Talk about being a bit short forward of the ball. Gold Coast had their chances to win this game, but they were woeful going inside 50 in the last quarter. They had 10 more inside 50s, but only kicked 1 goal to nothing.
Yeah, so into the wind as well. I mean, Chol has been a very accurate set shot. He misses that one. That would have made things really interesting, and they had so many opportunities, as you said. 1 goal, 5 from the entries that they had, plus 17 in contested. They were plus 30 in disposals, which is what can happen if you are playing against a young side in Hawthorn, the fluctuations of momentum that we've seen. But, yeah, their ball use was ordinary. I did love the work of the young Hawthorn mids. I mentioned Moore. Butler was terrific. Nash doesn't play all the time in the midfield, but when he goes in there is good. Newcombe and Ward's been really impressive as well.
We'll get to the rest of the round now, and Sunday's action centres around Brisbane and Carlton at the Gabba in that 3:20 kickoff. That's a massive battle for finals ramifications.
That's a huge one. So both teams, I mean, the fallout for the loser is probably going to be one of the biggest talking points on Monday, considering the week that they both had last weekend. I'm interested to see how Adelaide play, because they were really impressive against Carlton last week, but the week they've probably, it's one of the tougher weeks they've had in club history. So how does that affect them? And West Coast away, can they do something? I don't know, but yeah, clearly you're right. All eyes will be on that middle game. Plenty
of inspiration with Josh Kennedy's last game for the Eagles as well. Our one more thing, Kane, we couldn't overlook this. Ben Mcavoy in game number 250, I reckon he's finished every single one of them with some tape around this one. 5 minutes ago, it did look like he was going to end it, but then got the clarity
trademark. Look, and 5 minutes ago, actually came back on and took the game-saving intercept mark as well, and almost had the ball in his hands for the final siren. So what a warrior he's been. He spoke pre-game how proud he was to come from another club and then captain Hawthorn, and he has been a warrior. So congratulations to Ben.
Big fortnight ahead, Kane. Can't wait to watch it all unfold
Look forward
with
to
you
it
next week.